Alright everybody, we are back, and it's a sad time, because we've already talked about the best films of 2018, and there's a reason why I'm a little dressed down compared to yesterday, because we're now talking about the worst films to come out of theaters in 2018, and that's no offense to you. If you guys like any of these films, if you found a guilty pleasure aspect to any of these, that's good for you. I'm glad that you had the chance to enjoy them. These are just personally the films that did not work for me at all this year, and I don't really have any dishonorable mentions, so let's just get right into it, starting with number 10. Number 10 for me is the sequel to David Fincher's interpretation of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, and that's The Girl in the Spider's Web. Look, I'm a giant Fede Alvarez fan. I think what he did with Don't Breathe is amazing. I really enjoyed his interpretation in the remake of The Evil Dead. I think the guy's a phenomenal director. But when it comes to The Girl in the Spider's Web, the movie is boring, it's overly long, and despite having a couple of really cool action scenes, and despite Claire Foy giving an amazing performance as Lisbeth Salander, it really couldn't save the movie at all. Number 9 for me is Sorry to Bother You. Honestly, when it comes to this film, there's only one thing that I can say to really sum up the whole thing. Horses. Horses. That's really all I can say. And the movie, the first act may have been cool and good setup, but everything after that just did not work for me. From the dialogue to the over-the-top nature. Being over-the-top with a film can be really good to help the plot out, but with this, it just didn't work, and the movie was just a really, really terrible experience for me. Let me tell ya, number 8 was a really weird experience for me, because number 8 is a film that I had the chance to do for Sandwich John Films, invited by Zach Pope to review, and I don't think anybody saw it, and that's Nostalgia. It's a film with an all-star cast. John Hamm, we all know I love John Hamm, he's in there, and the film, although it was trying to play on the fact that we all, as we get older, nostalgia is a powerful tie that makes us love things that other people would look at us and think that we're insane for. That's a really cool idea, and that's a really, put in the right hands, it could be really, really well executed. But with this, it wasn't well executed, and I almost fell asleep probably 5 different times while watching the darn thing. Number 7 goes to show that even when Disney is at their highest of highs in their power, they are still going to hit a lot of walls, and that is the Nutcracker and the Four Realms. Taking the original ballet and trying to put it up onto the big screen, that would seem like a really cool adventure. And granted, the trailers for this movie did seem really cool. They looked like it was going to be an Alice in Wonderland kind of adventure. But this movie just falls utterly flat. From the over-the-top performances from Helen Mirren to Keira Knightley, the thing I can say is that the main lead in this film, if she wasn't good, the movie wouldn't be watchable. But she is good. But unfortunately, that really can't save the movie because it's still boring, terrible, has very horrendous dialogue and a terrible script. And the way the story goes, it just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Alright, Muppets turned into a film for adults sounds like it could be a really, really good thing, but if there's one thing that's proven, Jim Henson wasn't able to do it with SNL, and neither is his son, Brian Henson. Brian Henson, he's been involved with all the Muppet films. It seemed like he would be able to do a good job with this. I saw this film, and you all are going to say I gave it a positive rating. Yes, I did. I saw the film a second time. I utterly despised it. It was a completely different experience, and I could see why everybody was mad with the darn thing. The dialogue was horrendous. The film falls into so many different cliches. I mean, the main thing you can say about the film that works, once again, is the main character. Phil Phillip as a Muppet is a really great character, and I would like to see him in a traditional Muppet movie, because then he could be an actual good movie. Horror movies and possession movies can be good. They can also be really boring, really cliche, and just overall just stupid. And that's what you get with The Possession of Hannah Grace. You know, I was considering just leaving this film off of my list because I hated it so much, and I forgot about it almost immediately out after I left the movie theater. But then I thought again, that's probably the exact reason why it should be on my list. Once again, we have a main character who is really interesting, portrayed by a really good actress, but the fact is everything around this character is just not suited to the character we're given. It's a boring movie. It falls into every horror cliche that you can imagine. It's a horror movie that you could tell the filmmakers had a really interesting idea and they were really passionate about it, but the fact is everything just falls utterly flat, and it's one of the worst movies to come out this year. Number 4 for me has to be a horror film based off of a game that everyone plays when they're growing up. Truth or Dare. Once again, a film with a great concept, a horror movie with an interesting concept that really nobody has touched on before, and lore that sounds like it'd be interesting, but it just falls utterly flat on its face. And I can see why people would consider this film to be guilty pleasure-esque. There are guilty pleasure elements in here. But no, for me personally, this film is just horrendous. I wouldn't tell anybody to go see this darn thing. And by the end of the film, I just wanted to punch myself in the face for seeing it. Next film we're going to be talking about is the film that is based off of the urban legend. The urban legend was turned into a video game, and now I guess we have a movie that's a slash of the video game and the urban legend. Let's talk about the student film-esque Slenderman, shall we? By concept alone, once again, this film just... it falls utterly flat on its face. I mean, the CGI for Slenderman looks like it came out of the first generation PlayStation. The performances overall are horrendous. And once again, I see the guilty pleasure. There is elements in there that could be interesting. The direction is pretty darn good. It's probably the best part of the film. But it can't save the fact that the movie is boring. And the movie's only like an hour and a half long. It's boring. It feels like it's 3 hours long. And the performances, they are just not good. Number 2 for me is not only one of the worst films of this entire year, it's one of the biggest disappointments for me. Because Peter Berg and Mark Wahlberg came together and gave us Mile 22. Mile 22 seemed like it was going to be a goldmine. It could have been the new version of Jason Bourne for a new generation. But what we got with Mile 22 was a film with editing that was about as bad as Resident Evil The Final Chapter. The performances were fine, but the editing, the story, the direction, everything in here is just a utter mess. Everything falls flat on its face, and the thing you can say about it once again is that Mark Wahlberg portrays an interesting character that gives an okay performance because he's pretty much playing himself. The only reason why Mile 22 is not number 1 on this list is because there's a film that takes my favorite genre and utterly commits every single atrocity and crime you can imagine to it. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about my number 1. Number 1 for me came out earlier this year. I'm pretty sure that it came out in February, and that is Winchester. Winchester, a film about an old woman who stays inside a house and is haunted by demons. You know, it's a haunting movie, essentially. And it follows every cliche. Not only does it follow every single cliche, every single thing to try to scare you is a jump scare. Helen Mirren feels like she's phoning it the entire time. Jason Clarkson here, I have no idea. The guy's career seemed like it was on the uphill, but now he's in this darn thing. The movie is trash. The movie is awful. Not only are the performances, the cliches, and everything else is bad, it's just not an interesting story. From Act 1 to Act 2 to Act 3, everything falls to pieces, and the screenplay is just not good. and Winchester for committing every horror atrocity that there is to be found within this genre. You are my number one, and nobody should see you, and every copy that is made of Winchester needs to be destroyed. Once again, that's just my opinion, but Winchester is the worst film I saw this entire year. If you guys want to know what I mean by horror cliches and everything that is wrong with the modern horror genre that is in Winchester, there's a video that me and my buddy Zach Pope did. There's a link right up at the top. Go watch that. If you want some insight about the horror genre, about what we have picked up watching horror films over the years, that is a video that you need to see, so you can see just exactly why I hate Winchester as much as I do. Once again, that is just my opinion. If you had fun with any of these movies, that is up to you guys. But we are at the end. That is my list of the top 10 worst films of 2018. We've done the best, we've done the worst. Guys, it's up to you. Whatever your list is, leave it down in the comment section below. Let's get a conversation started. I want to know what your least favorite films of 2018 are. And I want to say Happy New Year to you guys. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Well, belated on the Christmas, but you get what I'm saying. It's been a phenomenal year, and I would not be where I am if it wasn't for the support and love you guys give every single time that I put a video up on this channel. Every time I'm up on the internet to interact with you guys. It's amazing. I love each and every single one of you. Your comments are great. The communication is fantastic, and YouTube is just a phenomenal place overall. I've had my negative experiences on here, but you guys have made it one heck of a positive year. All right. And finally, if any of you out there want to see more reviews of the films that I've seen in 2018, you can click right up there at the top. And if you want to see a sweet podcast with me and my buddy Zach Pope, the most recent one, we talked about our favorite heroes and villains of the year of 2018, click right down there. And as always, if you like what you've seen here and you want to see more, click right there and subscribe and become part of the fray of nerds who love cinema. You all have a fantastic day.